After nearly 3 years in the making, the moment has finally arrived. Today we're excited and a little bit nervous to unveil the custom guitar we built for our client Toby, who first reached out to us in 2021. After trying a number of guitars and talking extensively about Toby's aspirations for the guitar's tone, he fell in love with the rich, earthy, warm sound of fen and black oak, and we committed to using that on his custom build. We also quite quickly decided on redwood for the soundboard for its mix of warm but vibrant tone. We also decided on a multi-scale instrument, which would be a first in Toby's collection. I went out on a limb to suggest that this would both make his guitar distinct in his collection, but also give Toby that tonal balance and the tension he needs for his alternate tunings. Then of course there are the custom details, the brass side dots, the geometric gold rosette, the contrasting white binding, each chosen to reflect Toby's style and taste. These features make the guitar his, but they also add another layer of complexity. Even the smallest adjustments, like widening the nut and adjusting the string spacing, were critical to ensure Toby's technique could shine through without compromise. We took his feedback seriously, fine-tuning every element to his specifications, but until he plays it, there's always that question: did we get it just right? Today, all those decisions we've made will be put to the test. Toby will finally see and play the guitar we've crafted specifically for him, and it's a defining moment for both the guitar and our journey together. This is the culmination of years of work, and it's about to be put to the test. Soon we'll find out if we've created the perfect instrument just for him. Hello.
Morning.
Well, big day.
The moment has arrived.
It has. So do you want to see it straight away, or would you like
I guess.
to take
I
a
mean,
little
it's
moment?
been, what, over 3 years in the waiting. It feels like a moment. Maybe I should pause, but yeah, let's go for it. Why not?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll let you do the grand opening, as it were.
Good, very good. I'm expecting like a beam of light to come out as I open this. Wow, look at that. Spectacular. We definitely chose the best bit of redwood, I think.
I think we did.
There's a heck of a lot of silking on that, isn't there? That's incredible. Amazing. Well done.
It was a collaboration, for sure.
I did the easy bit, the fun bit. Gosh. Yeah, it looks, I mean, as we said, it looks so good under finish, doesn't it? It's interesting looking at the woods in their raw form.
Yeah.
And sort of imagining what they might look like, all sort of glossy and shiny.
It really just takes it to that next level, I think. But the luster as well, like the silking.
The silking's incredible. Very cool.
Ebony tuning buttons here.
Yeah, yeah, and you got the bog oak on the front and back of the headstock, which was something I wanted.
Yeah.
Squeezing enough bog oak out of these bits is obviously always a challenge.
Exactly. And your brass fret markers there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, a bog oak, it varies a lot, doesn't it? You get some quite pale bits, you get some really dark bits. There's a lot of these kind of rays and figuring. But that's the beauty of being able to come in and live not too far away and really, you know, choose the individual bits of wood, which is part of the fun. And you know, you got all the mitered joints on the purflings and bindings, which I think, you know, all of these things really add to the sense of quality. And I'm not too freaked out by the fan fret, which is good.
Okay, this is going to be the...
This is a bold choice, I feel, because I'd not actually played a fan fret before when I chose to go for that. And, you know, I like the idea in theory. Obviously, I know I get a sense of what it does in terms of maintaining that increased tension on the sort of drop lower tunings and so on the bass strings. And I think I sort of thought, well, you know what, on the left hand, it's fine. I think the kind of positions I use in open tuning, I'm pretty confident that'll be fine. What I didn't think about so much in advance is the right hand. And of course, the fact that you would naturally tend to play the treble strings a bit closer to the bridge, which is going to take a bit of adjustment.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's a relatively subtle fan fret, so it's not too extreme an adjustment. And it does look very cool. Nice. Should we hear what it sounds like?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely hearing like that low end that we talked about a lot.
Do you feel under the string any different, that you've got kind of that slightly longer
Not
scale
really,
length?
honestly, it's very natural. It's like, you look at it at this angle and you notice it, but of course from the player's perspective, you can quite easily forget it because you can't see the angled frets and it just feels very, very natural. I think particularly in the open tunings, you're often sort of like doing these kind of fingerings that actually, if anything, makes it easier. I very rarely would be playing bar chords. Even if I was, I don't think that would be an issue. How much of that low end is, obviously the longer string length is probably helping a bit. The wood choices we've talked about a lot, but it's, I think as I spoke to you at some point in the process, I like a lot of low end, but not in a way that's dominant, but in a way that's sort of more just extended and just there. Like the difference between a sort of cheap pair of in-ear headphones and like a nice quality set of cans. It's not that the bass is dominant, it's just that it's more there and it really supports the melody over the top. Some players like John Smith and so on, they use like a little Boss octave pedal to get like an extended bass end on the lower strings. It's nice if a guitar sort of does that on its own, but without kind of drowning out the treble notes where the melody and that information for the tune is. And it absolutely does that, which is great.
Definitely hearing like what we always try to achieve is the balance. Like you say, you want everything to kind of sit in turn with itself. So the hope that what we do is that nothing is unbalanced.
Yeah.
That it all kind of supports each other, and I don't know, to my ear, it definitely nothing feels overridden.
Exactly. No, it sounds incredibly balanced. And I think for me, and again, this is part of our conversation through the process. To get balance, for me, if anything, we need to sort of like focus more on the treble strings because I've got relatively short fingernails competing with a thumb pick on the bass notes, and because I think with a slightly larger body guitar anyway, there's a risk that there's not a lot of mass behind these little strings, and so to drive the top in a way where that melody can really stand out, and it exactly does that, which is great. There's plenty of volume, plenty of thickness and roundness on those treble notes, even though on the bass notes you still maintain that crisp sort of twangy quality, which is nice as well. In just hammering on, you get a sort of nice full, like it doesn't take effort to sort of bring out that lovely sustain. I have a pretty light touch, as you can tell, and it doesn't take any effort to sort of bring out.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sort of playing it, within its sweet spot. Some guitars I find they demand like a bit of a driving right hand, and I just don't have that. So I kind of want something that's responsive, but as we've been talking about, not so lightly built that it's not going to be long lasting. Or
I think the redwood as well helps with that.
Yeah. More so than cedar, or sort of in a similar?
I think this has a shimmer to it that I think would have maybe not been as quite quite as complex
Yeah.
with cedar. It definitely would have had the warmth, maybe even more like rounding off those slightly shimmery edges.
Yeah.
So it could have been an option, but I think, yeah, just the complexity of this.
Yeah.
I'm certainly drawn to it, but I'm biased.
Absolutely. And we talked about that sort of complexity a bit, and I think, I like warmth. I like a sort of thick, sort of mid-rangey tone to some extent, because I think it gives it that nice sort of vocal quality. But some guitars do that in spades. If you've got like a little small-bodied, mahogany-backed guitar or something, it's like all in the mid-range, but you lose that complexity. It's like a very sort of simple, sort of straightforward woody sound. Whereas this, I wanted that, but I wanted that sort of rich lushness that often comes with slightly bigger body guitars, slightly different woods. And this sort of feels like it does both.
Because it was kind of finding, like you said, you wanted the dreadnought. You wanted some aspects of the dreadnought, but you wanted some aspects of the slightly smaller body guitar. So it's like, where can we substitute? What can we change? Okay, we've decided we do want the smaller instrument, but how can we make that big sound?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it can, it can feel like it has to be a trade-off, but apparently not. Because, as I said, it'd be lovely to have this half from a big guitar, this half from a small guitar. And I think you've sort of achieved that, really.
Well, you have to say as well that this is probably the worst the guitar will sound.
Indeed.
So.
Because it's in my hands.
No.
And how would you say guitars change over the weeks and the years? Like, is there a sort of a predictable direction that they head in?
It honestly depends how much you play it, in my experience. I'd probably say if you play it most nights, it'll probably sound different in a week.
Yeah. But different in what way?
Just richer, I think.
Yeah.
Just everything just loosening up. I mean, I think the guitar does, there is some truth in the guitar does just take time to kind of relax into all of these new tensions that it's experiencing.
Yeah.
So how quickly that happens, I mean, it's definitely excited by the different frequencies of the strings. So I wouldn't be surprised in a week if it just kind of everything just opens out and blooms a little bit more. Yeah. But interestingly, maybe not as much with redwood. Yeah. Maybe what we are hearing right now is going to be the way that it stays for a little while. Yeah. In comparison to maybe something like spruce that it does start off quite closed. Yeah.
We talked about sort of more dry woody sounding guitars and more sort of lush reverberant kind of sounding guitars, and the little test I always do in Dadgad, because there's lots of D's and A's, is just to play an A note and then immediately mute it. And what you notice, bit of a Spinal Tap moment, the sustain is still going, but the rest of the guitar is doing that, right? It's not coming from the note I plucked, and not every guitar does that. And I think that sort of sympathetic resonance is coming from the other strings, it's coming from the whole guitar. I think that's quite a lot of where you get that sort of lushness and that sort of almost like a built-in reverb tank kind of sound, which if you're playing kind of Celtic style, pretty finger style tunes, just adds such like a sort of three-dimensional quality, because there's a movement under the notes, right? And often you've got a lot of open strings in these open tunings, because I'm typically only fretting like a couple of strings.
There's a lot,
and it's sort of like,
a lot going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We talked a bit about a possible sound port as well at one point.
Did we? Yeah.
But I think we sort of decided there's enough going on here with the multi-scale, not a super familiar sort of set of wood combinations and so on.
Yeah, I think we'd done enough to then throw in the variable of something that you'd never had before as well, because I think I was always of the mind that I want this guitar to be different from the guitars in your collection, but I don't want to throw in something that you could think, well, actually this is making me feel uneasy, or it's kind of like you don't know, oh, is it the sound port that's done this?
Yeah.
Like, is the sound, whether you like it or not, is this impacting on what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
And then that gives you that variable that I think in this circumstance I just didn't want to take the risk on, because I thought, well, actually let's see if the multi-scale is the variable that is that slight difference. Let's see if the redwood is that variable that's the difference.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like an easy. I mean, I'm primarily a at-home player, so I'm doing it for my own enjoyment. I want it to sound good to me as a player, not to an audience. But it does, like I'm getting a lot, like I'm feeling quite enveloped by the sound anyway. So I think the sound port might not have really, it might have just sort of gone a bit over the top. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's try it with a capo. It sounds wonderful. I think when I'm using a capo, you kind of almost want it to sound like a mandolin or something. You want it to maintain that richness of a shorter scale instrument, and not all guitars do that. I find sometimes they just sort of they feel like they have to be operating at their full sort of scale length. But as we were saying earlier, like it just sounds rich and fat right up the neck. And I bet it sounds as good even if we go crazy and put it up high.
Yeah, go for it.
If the capo's big enough, quite a wide neck, which we'll talk about in a minute. Sounds great. I mean, it sounds like a little cute small instrument, as it should, in a sort of full, fat kind of way.
It's kind of like the trebles don't have anywhere to hide in that regard, because
They
if
don't.
you've got a nice bass underlining everything, like the trebles can maybe get away with it, but when you've actually kind of robbed the guitar of its powerful bass, then the trebles kind of have to then come to the fore.
Absolutely.
And the mids.
And they have to be rich and full and. Well, speaking of necks, because the Capo just about fits across the neck at the 6th fret. It's sort of a wide-ish neck. Your standard is what, 44.5?
44.5, but I remember you got in touch, I think, actually, was it just before the build or even maybe during the build? And I was lucky, I think we just before, and asked for a slightly wider, which we took it to 45.
Yeah.
But then that's when we had the discussion about string spacing, in reference to the strings, to the outer edge of the fretboard, noticing what you had on your guitars, what you liked and didn't like about them, and that the fact that we wanted to prioritise a bit more on the treble side. So then I was racking my brain as to, because we hadn't started your fingerboard yet, whether to actually kind of proportionately offset the treble side. But then actually when we thought about it, we thought actually no, if you move your bridge, basically essentially running everything down the centre line, but just shifting the bridge over, everything kind of structurally, internally, you're only moving it a tiny bit. So
less than a millimetre or
you're not compromising anything there, and it means that you can just keep your fingerboard as standard. So that's what we did, just shifting it slightly over.
Yeah, and to provide a bit of context on that, I mean, you wouldn't know it to look at it. It looks perfectly true, really, and kind of central, but just a tiny bit more space between the string and the edge of the fretboard here than there is here. I find if you're doing vibrato on the bass string, you're going to be pulling down anyway, so that's not a problem. But if you're sort of vibratoing the high E string, on one or two guitars I've had in the past, it doesn't take much to pop off the edge of the fret.
Yeah.
And so just having that little bit more room, it makes a huge difference. And that's the kind of like attention to detail that you obviously get with a custom-made instrument. And I sort of felt a bit awkward asking, like, can you really do this to the tolerance of like less than half a millimetre here? And like, we're talking about a difference of what, 0.1 or 0.2 of a millimetre here? And you're like, no, of course, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's things like that make us better builders at the end of the day. If you kind of ask us to do things that we haven't done before, but actually you can see that it benefits the player, that's kind of where the custom instrument really excels, in being able to deliver instruments that are that specific to people who know what they want. So it's good to kind of to be challenged like that.
And particularly because you obviously do these beautiful semi-hemispherical fret ends, which feel fantastic. I was just wondering, does that mean there's a little bit more of a chamfer there, that the string is going to slide off more? But actually, I don't think
you actually have a little bit more flatness, because if you bevel it back, it would actually then bring the point of the fret further back. So you get just a tiny little bit more actually, where before it ducks down.
Because you're going around more than
rather than back,
Yeah, nice. And then a lot of our conversation was, of course, on the aesthetics as well. You know, once we sort of established the sort of main wood choices, and again, you know, being the difficult customer that I was aiming to be, a few like special requests there. So you've gone a little bit off-piste on your normal sort of binding layup, I suppose. But I think
it was kind of actually back to something that we had done more in previous work, when it's kind of marrying up what you were doing compared to design elements that you may have adapted and changed. But because you change things relatively, I guess, sometimes rapidly, it's just finding being more than happy to kind of go back to doing some things that we did before. So for example, this black, white, black, that would be something that I did maybe back in the early days, but less so now. But that's something that you liked, and because we do all of our own custom binding schemes, it was not a problem.
Yeah, because so we've gone for the black is ebony, is it, or is it like a sort of?
It's a black veneer.
Black veneer, and then we got koa. And what did you use in the end for the paler wood? The little.
Because it was and it was. It's a veneer wood, but you can get a bleach white compared to a slightly more natural white, and that's the natural white. And that's what we ran around the inside of the fretboard as well. And that, actually, speaking of kind of reverting to designs for the fan frets, we subsequently on our regular scale length fretboards have done kind of more of a curved effect.
On the end.
On the end, Scoop, But then you said actually on this, because maybe what I would have in my mind said, I want to do something similar to what we're doing now. But you said, actually, I really liked what you did before. And actually, when I thought about it, because obviously the bridge is a completely different design from our regular one anyway, I thought, actually, no, that I like what I did in the previous design. So
it sort of is in keeping with just sort of angled lines rather than having a little curve in there,
which could conflict with the overall feel of the direction of travel, as it were.
Yeah. But this is the detail that's all part of the fun, you know, just talking about this little purfling line. It's quite a sort of rich chocolatey guitar. We've obviously got a nice piece of redwood, although it's actually quite pale for redwood, gorgeous dark bog oak and lots of mahogany, and the colour is obviously very similar in colour to the mahogany, which I think works really well. But I didn't want this sort of bright white pinstripe in the purfling line, but it needed to be pale for that contrast. So being able to just have a slightly off-white, that kind of thing makes a big difference, I think. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So I think it's safe to say he did like the guitar, which is a first initial relief on my part. When I get to sit next to the person I built a guitar for, like I did with Toby today, I get to watch him play. It's just an absolutely magic experience for me as a guitar maker, because I spend so long procrastinating over the actual structural elements of the guitar. Sometimes you often forget that it's a musical instrument. So to see somebody as good as Toby play the guitar, it's really just a priceless experience for me as a luthier. If you want to go through the custom guitar journey, then we would be more than excited to talk to you. So please do get in touch with us through our website. And if you want to follow along on our YouTube channel, see more stories like this, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.